So I want to talk today about Thanksgiving's tomorrow, and it's really important to show thanks for our team. And I know this is obvious, but when I say thanks, let me clarify what I mean. Or maybe perhaps let me tell you what I don't mean. I don't mean the generic, hey, thanks, you're so great, good job, you killed it, blah, 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 and just blowing smoke up people's asses. What I actually mean is truly being grateful, which is to say it's a internal thing. It's something that you sit down and you actively think about that person. And even if perhaps you don't like them or they've slighted you or snaked you or something like that, choose to look for something about them that they do well, that you can appreciate. Even the worst people among us have something redeemable about them. Perhaps this is a musician who is good at guitar, but they lack social skills. So you can appreciate their virtuosic playing. Maybe this is someone who runs ProPresenter and changes your slides, who's absent-minded, yet they're good at moving the slides. Or maybe they're terrible at moving the slides, but they have a really great attitude or something like that. Someone who's always welcoming and kind, but they're not skilled. And just being intentional with thinking through each person that you work with in the worship environment, and from your musicians to the pastors on stage, to the people behind the booth, to the greeters, to everyone who makes the whole thing work. It's a collaboration. And without the essential people doing their specific roles, it wouldn't happen. And it's important also to take inventory, to be grateful for yourself and what you've gone through to get where you are, to develop the skill sets that you need to be successful. It's really important to take inventory of the sacrifices you've made, whether that's watching YouTube videos or, spending money to go to conferences like MXU. I did that. It's great investment. Or even going to college and getting Pro Tools certified. That was something I also did that was immensely valuable. Those sacrifices nobody knows about. I've worked in worship teams where it wasn't appreciated, but you still have to be grateful. Be grateful for the hard work that you've put in. Be grateful for the hard work others have put in, because it truly is a collaboration. And I think even more so beyond the collaboration is the relationships that you build with these people. And a lot of times I've seen in worship teams where they don't build relationships with other people. They build sort of these fake relationships where the only time they talk to you is when they need something, or if you're late. They don't go out of their way to make time to invest in other people. And if they do so, it's from like an obligatory standpoint where, I've got to go have lunch with someone on my team. And they don't actually care, which is what's so dangerous and sinister about this, is that we as people in worship need to actually care about other people. We need to believe that this is more than just, if you're a volunteer, it's more than just volunteering. If you're paid, it's more than just a contractor role. If you're a worship pastor, it's more than just people that you have to manage. It doesn't work without relationships. And I'm even saying relationships with people that you may not particularly be fond of or like. Those relationships are important too. Especially important because a lot of times, the breakdowns in teams will happen because we don't pay attention to those people. We don't pay attention to the conflict that's brewing behind the scenes. Maybe there's a disagreement professionally or personally. I think the ability to come to each other, even especially the people you don't agree with or align with, or you don't like their personality or whatever it is, and be able to put your differences aside and talk rationally and logically through things, and find common ground. It's a really important skill set to have. It's a really important practice. And if it's not natural, you have to make yourself do it. And you need to take inventory of all of these things all at once, simultaneously. I know it's very difficult, but realizing that it's all working towards the greater good. It's working towards the good of the audience, the person who's experiencing worship maybe for the first time. I was at a church one time as an attendee and walked in, and I was actually volunteering there too. But I walked in as an attendee on Mother's Day, and nobody greeted me really. The coffee people ignored me. It's like everyone was sort of like lost in their own world or in their own cliques. Whether they're all autistic or shy, I don't know, but everyone ignored me, which I thought was shocking because I was helping out there, and I was a regular attendee. But regardless, I went to the back row right before the service started, maybe 5 or 10 minutes before service started, and I sat down, and I'll never forget, the lady looked over to me. She was like 2 or 3 seats down, and she said, "Oh, sir, this is reserved for our family." It was Mother's Day. So I didn't throw a big fit. I'm like, it's Mother's Day. Plus, I am more in a helper capacity at this church than I'm actually as an attendee. So I just, without flinching, got up and just walked over to the side of the room. But then after I sat down, excuse me, I realized that I felt anger inside. I felt as though this person over here had the gall to say, "Hey, you can't sit here. The seat's taken." Now, just for a moment, imagine that perhaps you're suicidal. You've heard about Jesus, you've heard about the church, and you think, I'm going to give it one last try. Society's rejected me, the world's rejected me, nothing's working, my wife left me, whatever, right? And that person's feeling depressed and suicidal, and so they're thinking maybe perhaps Jesus will help them, the church will help them, right? And they walk in and everyone ignores them. The greeters are somewhat indifferent. They're like, "Hi, how are you?" Which I get it. I mean, you have to do it through, it's a hard role. It's a hard role to smile for hours on end if you're a greeter. I understand. That's why I never was a greeter really very long. I'm not naturally inclined to smile like that. But so they get ignored. They walk in the church. They get ignored. The coffee people ignore them. They walk in, and the first thing that happens when they sit down is they say, "You can't sit here." What's to say that person doesn't just walk out of the church and go blow their head off? Seriously. It's that important, and we overlook these things. We overlook the importance of everything that we do and how it all works together. And maybe it's not just the person who's the attendee, but it's like one of your volunteers, one of your staffers who's, they're moody and upset for some reason. So you talk to them in a particular way, it sets them off, and, but you don't know what's the underlying issue. You don't know that perhaps that there is trauma at their home. Maybe they're having marital problems, or maybe their kids are having issues, or maybe there's something going on, right? And you're going to show up and you're going to chastise your team over something minor, but you wouldn't know that if you didn't have a relationship with these people. That's what it might sound like I'm rambling a little bit, but that's really what I'm getting back to. The lesson is the relationship matters, and not one that's obligatory, or you're just, "Hey, you killed it, good job," right? Because that's just dog shit, if I'm being totally honest. That's not real. That's the very reason people hate churches and despise churches, is a lack of authenticity. They come into an environment where they're supposed to be cared for and loved and nurtured, right? And then what they're met with is false pretense. They're met with flattery and fakeness and cliques and not being included or whatever, right? The only way through all this is you've got to be intentional with your relationships. And so coming back, I want you to think about this week, being grateful. Be grateful for your team. Take time to think about something specific about them that is good. Even if it seems as though there's nothing good, right? There's nothing redeemable about this person. And we all know people like that, right? Maybe we are those people to some people, right? Be grateful for them and be intentional about thinking about it, and then also be grateful for yourself. But then pray for those people, right? Pray for the relationship, and then make time, and then go to breakfast with them, get to know them. I wouldn't be doing this male to female, obviously. There's some problems that could occur, but if you're a man, go to breakfast with the other men. If you're a woman, go to breakfast with the other women, all right? Or do it in groups or something, okay? Just be smart and build relationships intentionally, one-on-one, and then also one-to-many. It's really, really important to do this. And in my company that I have an advertising business, and we are really intentional about our relationships. It's really important that I know about the team and, what's going on in their life and how they're doing. And I try to make them feel included and welcome and provide them with all the tools and resources to be successful. And when they come to me, I listen, right? And that's another thing, is that when you have a relationship with people, you can communicate successfully. If you don't have a relationship with them, and let's say that you're a sound guy and your worship leader comes to you and just suddenly says, hey, your mix is terrible, after months and months of telling you it was great. And you're like, well, what are you talking about? And then you guys delve into this heated session about nothing, but y'all don't really know each other. But if you knew each other, you'd be able to know, oh, he didn't really mean it like that. Or maybe he did mean it like that, but I see where we need to work together to fix this. You can't do that without relationships. It's really important. If you got to do team building stuff, you got to play video games together, I don't know, whatever you got to do to figure that out. But it's really important that you have relationships with the people on your team, or you can't understand them. And when conflict inevitably happens, which it will, if it's not happening yet, give it time, it will. You can't work through it. And if you can't work through it, you're going to lose people. You don't need to lose people and have a revolving door of volunteers and musicians and you need to find a way to retain people. And the best way to retain them is to actually care about them. And I know this sounds very obvious, but you'd be shocked at the number of people who go to church, attendees, and they're doing all the work to build relationships. Nobody builds relationships with them. And when their dad dies, nobody calls them. It's like, well, why do I give money to this place? Why do I spend all my time here? Nobody gives a crap about me. It's ultra important. So if you've got a systems engineer that you never see, an IT guy, you've got a front of house engineer, you got a monitor engineer, you got a bass player who lacks social skills, it doesn't matter. Go out of your way to say hello to everybody. Go out of your way to build a relationship with them. And the best way to do that is just to ask them questions, open-ended questions, and get to know them. How'd you start playing bass? What brought you to this church? What do you like most about whatever, right? Who, what, where, when, why, that kind of stuff. And I worked in sales my entire life, so it's natural to me now, but there was a day when it wasn't. And I'll tell you too that churches, they ask you to do a lot, especially if you're a volunteer front of house guy or girl. You're back behind the stage or behind the board. They're asking you to do multiple jobs and to do them all with absolute elite excellence. They're asking you to do the job. Like if you look at a proper tour, like a touring company, that tours for bands, they've got all these roles really highly granular and segmented. They've got a guy who's tuning the PAs. They've got a guy who's running the board. They've got it's all broken out. But somehow in churches, we're expected to be absolutely elite at everything all the time and never make mistakes and somehow handle all that pressure. And it's a really stressful position to be in. And you got to be able to think on your feet really quickly and problem solve. There's a feedback issue. You got to be able to find it and solve it really quick, especially at bigger churches where there's a lot of complicated moving parts and Dante and this and that. So, but beyond all this, just know that the mission is the highest priority. What is the mission? It's to bring Jesus to people, right? It's to allow the Holy Spirit to communicate with them. It's to create an environment and experience that they can have an encounter with God. And it's going to be hard to do that if there's obviously a high-pitched noise that's causing feedback, it's distracting, they can't focus, or if you're able to, run the soundboard as though you are a musician, as though it is your instrument, you're going to be able to communicate with people a lot more effectively through your mix. And you're going to be able to, one of the things I used to do to see if I could, am I being successful as a sound engineer or not, is can I give myself goosebumps? Obviously, it assumes that the musicians have practiced and prepared their parts, right? There's only so much you can do. But if they had, and, could I give myself goosebumps? Can I blend it in such a way that inspires people? And in a way, you are trying to channel the art, the worship, into something that can help facilitate an experience and an encounter with God. right? It can move people in a very powerful way. And if you're sitting behind the soundboard and you don't have a relationship with your worship leader or your worship pastor, or they don't have a relationship with you, it doesn't matter whose fault it is, or maybe they said something negative to you or slighted you or snaked you. It doesn't matter. You're going to be thinking about that as you're running the sound, be like, right? Or they're going to be on stage unable to lead worship effectively or preach effectively because of something they said to you or you said to them, right? So it's like we conveniently ignore all the people stuff, but it's super, super important. It's ultra relevant. So it's all about relationships. It's all about communication, teamwork, like actual teamwork, not just for optics, right? Everyone's worried about how things look. Don't worry about how things look. Worry about how things are. Like, obviously care about how things look, right? But care mostly about the truth, about how things actually are. Do I actually care about my team? Do they actually care about me? Are we actually an effective unit? Are we actually rehearsing and becoming better at our craft, right? Are we actually doing the thing that we showed up here to do? Or have we just devolved into going through the motions, right? It's just very easy to do, especially week after week. You're tired. A lot of us, we have full-time jobs and then we go work on the weekends, or we do the gig or whatever it is, right? We're exhausted. We're tired. We're having to get up at 6 or 5 in the morning to go, and then you have to knock out 3 or 4 services. It's not an easy thing. So I'm going to wrap this up by just saying, just think about the word trust. Do you have trust with your team? Do they have trust with you? When you're running the mix and they give you a look, do you have that relationship with your pro presenter person or someone back there that says, there's that frequency that's kind of like, can y'all trust each other? That they're also listening for you, that you're listening for them, that everyone's like a SEAL team or a Spartan unit, right? Everyone's watching each other's backs. Or are you a bunch of solo people? Are you like the point guard in middle school who's good at basketball, who just hogs the ball and makes all the shots? Everyone else is just like backup, right? So I'm encouraging you to build trust with everybody. That takes time and takes intentionality. It takes authenticity. It takes rational thought, rational mind to do this stuff too. You can't just, it's part of being a worship pastor. I got to do it. No, do it because it's what works. It's what builds a great team, because it's the right thing to do, because the truth lives within relationships. And also that the most effective teams will fall apart when trust is eroded.